Hi there, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to Reading Aristotle's Politics. Today we're looking at Chapter 2 of Book 6, um, which is continuing on the different types of democracy and how to institute them. So let's look at this. Now, he says, the basic premise of the democratic sort of regime is freedom. So what is the premise? Freedom. Uh, 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 in other words, the democracy in a sense is freedom is the most that people are free. Um, it is the basic premise, right? It is customary said that only in this sort of regime do men partake of freedom, for, as it is asserted, every democracy aims at this. One aspect of freedom is being ruled and ruled in turn. So remember, the concept of a citizen is this idea of being ruled and ruled in turn. So there's something interesting he's saying here. The implication is here that the nature, if democracy, if in other words, something grabbed my eye and I thought it was a bug, but um, uh, uh, the nature of the political is the idea, and citizenship. Who's a citizen is one who is who rules, right? And he's ruled. He's both ruled and ruled in turn. He's and the idea here is that that's freedom. This is what freedom means, to be free. To be free is not to be ruled, simply ruled. It is to rule and rule in turn. It is being both. It is being both not only subject to rule, but also capable having the ability to make the rules. So, if that's politics, in other words, there's something about. In other words, democracy seems to the end of democracy and the end of politics seems to be the same in that sense. It seems to overlap significantly. And that therefore this is that character. Now let's look at this. Just think about that for a second. There's something about the nature of a democratic regime that, in other words, the discussion of book 3 about the nature of the citizenship. Um, um, uh, there's something implicitly in the concept that citizens' role is this sounds like democracy in that sense, where if only hand of the few is oligarchy, right? That in other words, so therefore this idea here is so the principle of freedom seems to be one aspect of freedom. He says is being ruled and ruled in turn. The justice that is characteristically popular is to have equality on the basis of number, not on the basis of merit. So therefore, uh, justice justice on that is having the concept of equality on the basis of number. Okay, the idea is that the ones whoever has the most should rule. The one who has the most. Where what is that? And not on the basis of merit. In other words, that you're good or you're the best one. Um, where justice is of this sort, the multitude must necessarily have authority. So if justice, the principle of justice in the regime is that it should be the numerical, the ones the greatest number. In other words, there's two principles of justice. That is, it must either be on the basis of number, equality on the basis of number, um, that everyone is equal, and that the one who has the most ones should be, the greatest say, right? That this is the equality on the basis of number, not on the basis of merit, right? He says so. Therefore, and if justice is the principle of justice is this principle, then okay, the multitude must have authority. And what is resolved by the majority must be final and must be justice. For they assert each of the citizens must have an equal share, right? Every citizen has an equal share. The principle of equality. So therefore, it's not. This is the principle is also freedom implies a kind of equal share. Okay, So therefore, this is freedom and equality in that sense. The implicit this idea that everyone has an equal share, everyone's share and rule should be equal, and that therefore means that the majority should rule. Okay, so the principle of equality leads us to the principle of majority rule. Um, and each citizen, in other words, and therefore the multitude of authority, and what is resolved by the majority must be final, and must be justice. This is justice. The result is that in democracies, the poor have authority. In other words, in other words, the poor will have authority. Then have more. Poor have more authority than the well-off, for they are the majority. And what is resolved by the majority is authoritative. So therefore, the principle here is the majority principle. The majority principle, and that's why the poor being more than the rich, right? The well-off, because of if the well-off are going to be few. In other words, being the poor, the more will be poor than well-off. That is just the probability, right? So therefore, the result is that in democracies, the poor have more authority than the well-off, because for they are the majority, right? And what is resolved by the majority is authoritative. This then is one mark of freedom, and it is regarded by those of the popular sort as defining the principle of the regime. So this is the one that this idea, this discussion here. This is the defining principle of the regime. Another sort of freedom, okay, is to live as one wants, for it is asserted for this is, they assert, the work of freedom, since not living as one wants is characteristically a characteristic of a person who is enslaved. So wait a minute. So another aspect of this, so being free is this idea of not, not being a slave. To live as you want. Okay. But here's the problem with this is the famous problem of living as you want. This can be destructive as well as Yes, it is. It is the opposite. It is living as since not living as one wants is characteristic of a person who is enslaved, right? Who is ruled, who is always ruled, right? The enslaved one is not free. So therefore, the free person is one who is not can do what they want. The problem with that is that doing what you want may be problematic, as we know in that sense. Why? Because some things we might want things that are not good for us or not beneficial for us, might be harmful for us. We might engage in things that are not beneficial and harmful, as the ethics taught us, ourselves as ethics, teaches us. So, okay. Um, so yes, freedom is good. We not living as you want is a characteristic as being a slave. So it's yes, doing what you want, but wait a minute, you have to be careful here. If you take doing what you want to an extreme, again, this is what Plato in his Republic and the famous chapters on this tyrant saying that this is the claim that doing as you want, and there's something tyrannical of taking to do what you want and not being restrained by anything. Not to and this is the idea that as long as the law restrains you in this sense, the doing what you want. In other words, you don't take this to an extreme to do unjust things. To do unjust things. Okay. If it takes it to this destructive aspect of doing what you want, okay. Uh, this then is the second defining principle of democracy. That is that they can do what you want. They say this is the second mark of freedom, right? From it has come the claim to merit of not being ruled by anyone, or failing this, to rule and be ruled in turn. In other words, this idea No one should rule us. But if we have to be ruled, rule in turn, right? It contributes in this way to freedom. It contributes in this way to the freedom that is based on equality. So this is the principle that freedom is based on equality, right? So this is the second defining principle, this equality in that sense. So freedom and equality, these two principles. These things being given, and democratic rule being of the sort, the following are characteristically popular. So we have to look at what is popular, right? That these things being given, what you said is two principles, right? Freedom and equality. In other words, that we get freedom is that the should be ruled by the majority. Um, uh, that the pop must, in other words, that equality based on number, not on the basis of merit, and and that what is it that yeah, being freedom, right? And then the other one is second defining principle is live as one wants, right? That we should have not be enslaved. So the following are characteristically popular things, right? What election of all the offices from among all the citizens, right? So these are things. So one, these are the popular election to all offices from among all citizens. Two, rule of all over each, and of each over all in turn. Okay, so therefore, remember that principle of different types of offices back in book 4. We looked at the different lists. You just look at the different types of if you look at the different types of the means. Yeah, that's again the variations of offices in 314, 315. The 12 combinations. Remember a different way we elect officers, select. So he's hiding this. This is what election of to all officers, to office from among all the citizens, right? Rule of all over each, and of each over all in turn, right? Having all officers chosen by lot, or those not requiring expertise in art, or in other words, having all offices, or only not, or those offices not requiring experience, right? Or art, techne, art. In other words, especially like generalship and finance, treasury, accounting, certain things that something very technical. Off either all offices selected by lot, grant, of all the citizens picking one out, lottery. Uh, Having offices not based on any assessment or basis on the smallest possible assessment. So none are the smallest, right? So what is again? This is that's one criteria, two criteria, three criteria, the fourth criteria, uh, or in few cases apart, from those relating to war, right? Okay, so those cases apart, other words, assessment of something that's apart from those relating to war, right? That's assessment. Word assessment means like how much money you have, how much wealth or land you own. Um, Next criteria, the semicolon seems to divide it here, right? So the first semicolon, the second semicolon, third semicolon, fourth semicolon. So this is the fifth one here. Having all offices of short durations, or where this is possible. So offices should be short, or only those off or short ones only when it's possible. So some offices might require longer durations. Um, so therefore, having all adjudicate, this is 6, having all adjudicate or persons chosen from all, and concerning all matters or most matters, and these the greatest and most authoritative. For examples of this, the most authoritative, for concerning audits or the regime concerning audits or concerning the regime or private transactions. Okay, these are the most authoritative things, he says. For example, concerning audits or the regime or private transactions. Um, uh, um, Next, ooh, hold on. If that was fifth, sixth, seventh. Now, the assembly having authority over all matters, or the greatest, and no office having authority over any, uh, or no offices having authority over any, or having it over as few as possible. So in other words, the assembly should have authority over all the matters, or the greatest matters, and no office should have authority over any people, or if they do, have a very few as possible. Of the officers, the most popular is the council. When there is not a steady supply of pay for all. Okay? If there's not a steady supply of pay for all, the most popular is the council. The council. When there is pay for all, right? The powerful even of this office is the power of even this office is eliminated. For if the people are well supplied with pay, they have all decisions referred to themselves, as was said in the earlier in regard to this inquiry, this inquiry preceding this. Now, Lord 6. This is chapter 15, book 4, chapter 15. Paragraphs 12 and 13 about this. Right. This is the idea of the people. And if they can afford to pay, they're not going to tolerate officers making decisions. If you can pay everyone to come to the assembly, and the assembly is going to be filled with everyday citizens, they're not going to like it that the council is going to make decisions. Okay, when there's few people, when there's not much wealth, the council democratic. When it's when there is money, great money, and there's lots of revenue, they can pay people. Then okay, decisions refer to themselves. Next thing. Next, providing pay, particularly to all, for the assembly, the courts, the offices, but failing this, for the offices, courts, councils, and assemblies that are most authoritative, or for those offices where it's necessary to have common messes with one another. This established practice is democratic Athens. This idea of having enough money that they are able to form a community. And this is a weird thing about the Greeks. The idea of common messes. This is something that was continued in Middle Ages. Not politically. We don't have this idea politically. Common messes would be they'd eat together. They'd eat together. They'd dine together. This is how the Oxford and Cambridge colleges have it. The faculty live they live at the university, and therefore they dine together and they share a life together. Very kind of communal in that sense, and that therefore an office they actually dine together, and have to dine together. Um, this is a kind of conception. Now this is lost a little bit in modern times, and how they're doing it. So this idea here is that this is again he's listed out the things that are what are considered popular. These are the so-called democratically things regarding the institutions and the institutions that are have a democratic, and how they're to be arranged, how these offices, how the authoritative and all the and the offices and the courts are to be selected, how they're doing it. And he did it, so therefore, so let's look at this now. Further, since oligarchy is defined by family, wealth, and education, so if oligarchy is defined by family, wealth, and education, wait a minute, I thought education and family was aristocratic, right? No, no. Uh, the opposite of these things are held to be characteristically popular: lack of birth, poverty, and vulgarity. Uh, again, it's interesting that wealth is in the middle, right? Wealth is in the middle, and opposite of and family is lack of birth, and then vulgarity for opposite vulgar, which is eight. The sentence is bracketed by Dranzinger as interpretation, and most certainly rightly, in a sense, vulgarity refers to the bonosi. Vulgarity renders the bonosi. Those who are working with their bodies. Those who are not working with their minds. In other words, the bonosi are those physical laborers who only have their bodies. Okay, and this is the vulgar sort, right? This is why he reads it that way. So again, so if this is the lack of birth, those who don't have great family, poverty. Okay, this again, poverty. Now this is interesting. Remember, he warned against the danger of poverty, right? But this is characteristically popular, right? With regard to the offices, another popular characteristic is having none of them for life. So, and if any such remain out of previous revolution, in other words, you don't want to have anyone for life. No one's appointed for life. But if they did come from if they existed prior and after the revolution, they stripped them of their power and make the holders chosen by lot rather than by election. This is notably the case in regard to institution of kingship, as in Athens or elsewhere. Um, an institution that had very much for life institutions. Okay, then if you're going to do it, you strip it of all its power and you make it lottery. You make it rather than by election. Okay, so therefore, this is a way you do this. Now we think of judges. Um, in we today, the only institution in America we think that people have life tenure is judges, right? For judges, but judges have limited power, really, even though they've been abusing of this. The real decider is usually the jury, right? And how do we select juries? Random. The power of life and death is usually in the hands of a jury. But there's a tendency. What happened in America, you can say that the increase of judicial authority and the rise of judicial power is an anti-democratic function. In other words, if anyone is appointed for life and has great power, that's anti-democratic. So no, with regard to offices, a popular characteristic. So it's not the opposite of this is not something for life is not popular. It's oligarchic in that sense, aristocratic oligarchic. And these things are common to democracies. Then, so those things that we just listed there are common to democracies. Then, but what is held to be democratic or rule of the people above all is what results from the sort of justice that is agreed to be democratic, which is all having an equal share on the basis of number. For it is equality. For it is equality if the poor rule no more than the well off, and do not have authority alone, but all do equally on the basis of number. For in this way, they might consider both equality and freedom as being present in the regime. So, therefore, this is the whole chapter 2 is lighting up what is the principle of the regime and the institutions and the structures of the format, what is the things that are characteristic of a democratic regime regarding the institutional arrangements and structures of how it's formed. And then another thing he says common is that it's the rule of the people, but what is this agreed to, right? That having equal share on the basis of number, not class in that sense. Notice that for if it is equality if the poor rule no more than the well off, if they do not have authority alone, but all do equally on the basis. So all, in other words, it's not just the poor ruling, and it is all ruling, and that whoever of the all is the majority that determines it. It's not a regime that says, okay, only the poor can vote. Rich people can't vote. Okay, that's not democratic in that sense. That is a regime of the poor. Now, but he said that the regime, but he says predominantly poor. See, that's the thing about this. Is why the poor. In other words, it's not that only the poor have authority. Is it that they're majority? They're the largest batch, and they're and that's why that this is that kind of this is why the poor tend to be democratic, because of their number, and that they will be in the largest part of in a given community. So that's where we end here. This is a short chapter. This is if you have any comments or questions or concerns, please put it below. I will, when I see them, I will respond to them. Another thing is, if you liked it, like it. It's, share it on social media. Share with a friend. If you've not subscribed, please subscribe. Get a friend to subscribe. Let's grow the channel a little bit. Um, I would like to see the channel grow a little bit. And another thing is, but if you didn't like it, you don't want to say no. Say, do the thumbs down, but say why in the notes, comments. What's wrong? What would you recommend? What's wrong and why is it wrong? Now, you can follow me on social media. Links below. If you want to help me doing this some more, can financially help. Life is expensive these days, inflation and things. Subscribe star Patreon is there. Okay, yes, I don't have. I mean, I don't see many people there, and I'm not. I'm too late in this, and I'm probably not being watched by a lot of people. I'm not that popular. Oh no, I'm not going to be now studying these kind of topics. And I'm a little disappointed that some people I know who say this is good hasn't really kind of pushed us a little more. But okay, what else? So if you want to help, subscribe stars, Patreon, please. It'd be useful. I could use it really, honestly. Another way you can help is to buy my book. This is a book I released in 2022. A notebook for Aristotle's politics. It is like Cliff's Notes. It's studying the politics. This will guide you through it. This is a study guide. It's not a commentary, not interpretation. This is basically an outline, structures of outlines and graphs and charts to help you go through the politics book by book, chapter by chapter, to get a better handling of it. Well, that's it. I hope you have a good day, and I'll see the next time we meet. We'll do chapter 3. Take care. Bye bye.